Hi, everyone. It's Bob Ost. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the True Community Gathering. Those of you who have been with us before, welcome back. Those of you who are new, thanks for finding us. If you are interested in what we do and you want to actually be part of the room, you can also email us at trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com, and ask me to Zoom you. And we'll put you on the Zoom list and you'll get invited every week to all of these things that we do every week. I started this, I actually checked and counted before I came on today. And this is actually the 129th consecutive week that we're doing community gatherings and bringing in people from the community and from the theater community at large to talk about, originally it was about COVID. Everybody remember COVID? It's really not something in the past yet, but it was something that was very much present and very much a part of our lives for a long time. March 15th, they declared shutdown in New York. And we all went, what? What does that mean? You mean quarantine? Oh, you don't really mean quarantine, do you? Well, apparently they did. And apparently COVID was something real. As much as we tried to dive into denial, there it was. We were unable to avoid it at all. And people were quarantining and isolating and feeling lost and not sure what to do about it all. And I was told about something called Zoom. Zoom. I never wanted to know what Zoom was, but I found out what Zoom was, and I said to people, should I get a Zoom account? And should I open it up? And should we get together on Fridays and talk about how frustrated and lonely we are? And everybody said, yeah, let's do that. So I started doing this as a response to COVID. And we started April 17th, 2021. And I've had amazing people come into the room to talk about all aspects of the theater and performing arts, really beyond theater. I mean, we were thrust into the world of virtual, which is really a form of film. So film became really a part of our conversations too. And the difference between a live performance and a filmed performance, and if it's filmed, is it still theater? That was one of the key questions that used to come up. And people talked about how to create in a vacuum by themselves. And we supported each other. And we actually, here we are 2.5 years later. And I think we've all gotten through it very elegantly, and very proud of all of us. We've done it. We're not out of the woods yet. There's still COVID. There are comes in all sorts of flavors now. You can get it in 25 different flavors. COVID. And there's vaccines that are, oh, great fun. I think I've got my third vaccine at this point. Who knows what else is coming up in the future, but at least most of us are not getting as sick. I do want to mention that 400 people in America a day are dying of COVID. So it's not over. For the sake of those people that are vulnerable, I still ask everybody to please be careful and be conscious of the people around you, not just your own self, but also the people that you might come in contact with. So our conversations are now moving into live performance, and we're coming back. And I'm going to talk today about a subject we haven't actually addressed in 2.5 years, and it's long overdue. It's theater for young audiences, TYA they call it, for those of you who don't know. And I have two companies, one from the East Coast and one from the West Coast. I'm not sure whether there's going to be an East-West cultural difference. It just happens that we have somebody from New York and somebody from California here at the Bay Area. And we're going to talk to them about what they've been through. I hope people don't mind us going back to the COVID conversation, but I feel like it's something that has changed all of us so much. And I think it's worth noting what the influence is and what the impact of COVID has been on us and our art making. So I'm going to bring in Khalia and Mara, and I'm going to welcome them to True. Hi, how are you guys? Welcome and happy Friday. So nice. Mara, you and I have been dancing around each other for 25 years, something like that. I think, can you tell me, when did you start Treehouse Shakers? Mara is the artistic director of Treehouse Shakers here in New York.
Bob, I think we started Treehouse Shakers 25 years ago, and I was trying to remember. It's hard sometimes to remember the beginning, but I would say 22 years ago, you had me on a panel of TYA directors and artistic directors from New York City. So I was trying to go through, that's how long we've known each other.
I don't know if you remember, but I also tried creating a subgroup of True TRU, which was as a networking group for theater for the young audience, theater companies. Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember that, and I'm sorry if not everything is on the top of my head.
I had a hard time getting it to lift. We didn't make it to lift off, but we tried.
Okay, good for us.
Yeah. So, and Khalia, right? Make sure I get it right.
Yes.
Okay.
Khalia Davis. Hi, everyone.
And you're with Bay Area
Theater.
Yes. So tell us about that, and how long has that been around?
So Bay Area Children's Theater has been around for about 19 years. It was started by Nina Meehan, the CEO and founder, and it was also like a group of friends that were working actually through Kaiser Permanente's educational touring group, and they saw a need for specific theater that was geared towards young audiences out in the Bay Area that didn't exist yet. And so they all got together and created something really fun and wonderful, and it's actually grown and grown and grown, and now we are known globally, which is a really beautiful thing. Still bringing the joy of theater and arts education to kids all over the Bay.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that, about theater and arts education, and the other reasons why TYA matters. It really does matter. It's formative. It helps create people in our culture who actually appreciate the arts. It engages them, it teaches them. Did I get your whole founding story, Mara? I think we skipped over to True. So tell us about the creation of Treehouse Shakers back 25 years ago.
So I founded the company with my very best friend, Emily Budding. We had grown up together in Wyoming. She's a dancer and choreographer, and I'm a writer and director. We went to college to pursue acting for myself and dance for herself and directing. And when we came to New York, we just weren't feeling like we were seeing work that really melded and blended dance theater. So we were really, I would say, blind with naive passion, and without any business.
Well, I got to say, thank God for naivete, because so many things would never have happened if people hadn't been naive.
Exactly.
We wouldn't have any theater. We wouldn't have a theater business at all.
It's true. If anyone knew how hard it was before they get into it, they won't join it. So. Yeah, so we had our very first show at Ensemble Studio Theater, and it did amazingly well. We blindly put up 2 weeks of a show that I had written and Emily had choreographed, and we pulled dancers and actors from around the city, and it was union. I don't know what we were doing. Somehow we ended up packing the houses and getting all this great press, and we thought, well, that was easy. And that was just like the beginning of Treehouse Shakers. It has not been easy from that point on, but we were blessed, I guess, with that very first show of having such a wonderful response from New York City.
So there's a bigger picture about TYA. TYA covers a lot of different aspects, and I'm not sure that each of your companies does everything that TYA is capable of doing. But I want to talk about specifically how you chose what aspect of theater for young audiences, why you chose those aspects that you focus on, and maybe you do it all. Maybe you do it all. Maybe I'm wrong. Just let me know. Khalia, let's start with you. Let's talk about the big picture of TYA, but then talk about what it is that you like that really makes you passionate.
When we talk about theater for young audiences, we often assume that that just means performances that are done on stage in front of young audiences. But actually, what we're really trying to say is that it's this larger umbrella of how we bring arts to kiddos and their families. And so, Bay Area Children's Theater, one of the things that we really take pride in actually is the fact that we have many different opportunities for kids to have access to the arts. And that's what we really care about. So whether that means we have families who can come to our shows on the weekends and support us and see the work and enjoy that experience together. We also have opportunities for kids who are excited about what they saw and want to try it themselves. So we have an academy program. So there's a lot of beautiful arts education work and youth theater work that is happening within our company as well. So we are like getting kids excited, and they're the next generation that's going to be on our stages and in our classrooms teaching and leading and directing and choreographing. And then we also recognize the importance of bringing the arts to the kids where they are in the community. So we have an outreach department that is specializing in in-school programming and community outreach that reaches the kids where they are, because we recognize that not everybody has the opportunity or ability or accessibility to get to us, and that shouldn't stop them from being able to experience the arts, because as everybody on this call knows, I mean, there's a reason why we all are obsessed with being artists. It's that there's just so much joy and magic and opportunity, and we don't want any child to miss out on what that could do for them and how transformative that can be. So those are, I would say, maybe our three biggest pillars that we focus most of our attention on at Bay Area Children's Theater.
Mara, to you with the same question. You can give us your idea of what the larger view is, and what part of that you embrace with your company.
Yeah, we Khalia said it so eloquently, but yeah, we do pretty much the same.
Khalia, you did a fabulous job on that.
Yeah, you did wonderful. So Khalia will be speaking to me tonight, and I'm just joking. We really do the same. So we have performances for young people. We actually have a New York City biannual season, which has grown and grown over the years for young people. We were one of the very first companies to tour a play for babies that was a dance play for babies, Hatch. So that's been touring for 10 years, and it's recognized by our community as being one of the first plays by an American company to tour for babies. We do work within the community. We have after school programming, we do in-school programming. Again, we also believe that all children need access to the arts, especially in a culturally vibrant city as New York. We believe that bringing down the barriers to how children access the arts and have that vital opportunity, because the arts are just like nutrition, right? If the kids don't have it, they won't grow into these beautiful, thoughtful, kind humans that can truly make an impact in this world. So for us, it's performances, it's touring, it's in-school programming, it's community outreach, it's all of those things. We happen to have the lens of dance and theater, more so than maybe more of the other TYA companies. But other than that, I think our overall alignment is the same as our community overall.
My political gripe about all of this has been that I feel like the arts are not really respected enough in our country, and I don't think they're funded and supported enough. And one of the things, there are many things that need to happen, but one of the things that you guys take care of that needs to happen is we need to have an entire generation that's inured in the arts and understands the importance of the arts. So thank you for doing that. Now, if somehow or other we can get the message across to politicians, that would be helpful. So it's something that it's a real bugaboo of mine is how underappreciated we are. Let me ask you this: historically, this is to both of you. Historically, has TYA been inclusive? We have become very aware of the fact that theater hasn't been as inclusive as we assumed it was for all these years, and we've taken steps, and we're being conscious about it right now. Is the same true of TYA, or has TYA have been pretty much an inclusive art form from the get-go? Curious. I don't know. I have no answer to this. I'm just curious of what you think.
I think I might, just for this, like I have my own opinion. I would love Khalia to speak because Khalia has done a lot of work in our field around this issue. Of course, the work is never done. It's a slow change, even though everyone's like, we're on board and it's all over our website and we've changed. No, you haven't actually changed yet.
Okay, that's a big thing I was wondering about.
So,
I didn't know how to tiptoe into that, so I just jumped.
I think Khalia should speak about it. She's done some beautiful work and some deep work with companies, and so I'd love for her to have the.
Khalia?
Oh, well, thank you. I also want to plug Mara's company's latest show. I think is also something that you should speak to in terms of the inclusion that is happening in multiple different spaces for multiple different types of little people, little humans. Yeah, you know.
Go for it. Go for it.
Listen, y'all, we know that there is a certain community of human beings in the art sector, in the industry, who truly were moving through their artistic journey being like, everything is beautiful and wonderful and great, because I have the privilege of being able to see myself and my family and my stories consistently told in front of me, and people I'm seeing reflected on that stage, in the behind the table, behind the doors, in the administrative offices. So there was so much of that it was really difficult, I think, for them to recognize that actually what was happening is there's a whole other group of and community of marginalized humans who were like, we also want to make incredible art, and we want young people to see that art as well, and we want them to see themselves reflected in that art. And also, I think something that should be noted here, some of you have, when you were sharing what you're doing, congratulations, everyone on this call is just so well accomplished, and I'm so impressed with everyone. That in the theater for young audiences sector, some of the traditional models that are taken by children's theaters is by adapting work written for kids, so utilizing popular children's books and then turning them into shows for kids to see. And I think that was something that has been really integral in the conversation about further inclusive practices, is how actually the children's publishing industry has been a bit of that barrier and that gatekeeping in stopping us from actually being able to adapt work that is culturally specific or responsive to what kids are going through right now. It takes leadership in these different institutions recognizing the importance of these stories and taking actually a risk and saying, you know what, maybe we don't need every show to have animals as our lead characters. Maybe we can take a risk on something that has a true cultural storyline that is going to relate to a very specific demographic of young people, but at least that is going to create, like Mara said, these children with empathy and kindness because they are witnessing someone who is different from them and they're learning. And I think we're robbing them if we don't take more of those risks and also invest in folks like yourselves who are writing original work, who are being inspired by your own stories. Treehouse Shakers is notorious for creating a lot of original pieces that are helping to create universal messaging so that all little babies can enjoy what they're watching and what they're viewing. So I think that those are some really great ways that we can be moving forward, but it is taking us some time. But I'm so grateful that there was this great awakening that has happened, and so many more people are actually talking about it now. And there's movement that is going on, especially in the TYA industry.
I'm glad to hear you say especially, and I mean it's something that we're all conscious of. We've been made aware of it. I mean, COVID, 2.5 years of sitting and thinking about things. It's like, yeah, you can't turn away. You got nowhere to go. You're in your home and you're watching TV and you're seeing all the stuff that's happening around the country. You can't get away from it. So we've actually those of us who have chosen to have become as conscious as we know how to be about all of this. And of course, individually, we all have our own barriers and our own mental blocks that we hope we eventually will see our way through. I wasn't sure. Khalia, I got to say, I'm so thrilled to have you talking about this, because I was going to, like I said, I was going to tiptoe into it and see where it led. And it seems like it really is the issue that I was concerned it might be. Mara, can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing towards creating a more inclusive environment for these kids, and something that a little they see that's the way of showing them cultures beyond themselves, actually of themselves, and for other people that are beyond cultures that are beyond their own experience.
I mean, for us, we've always done original work. It wasn't until we finally do a book in the model of TYA, because everyone's like, why don't you do a book? So of course, Treehouse Shakers chose the most book that had never been heard of, called The Boy Who Grew Flowers by Barefoot Books. And it was written, the author wrote it for her brother who has autism. And he's different than the other people in his town because he grows these beautiful flowers out of his head. And so we were happy to take that piece and tour with it. And this is, before the pandemic, before we like to, in TYA, call it our dual pandemics that were going on, because we're doing a racial reckoning and we're also doing looking at COVID. So we had two things happening. For us, during COVID, we just felt like we were really worried about the kids that we had been working with in the schools, after school programs, kids who were alone because parents were at work, kids in the queer community. We created multiple programs for children that ended up being nationwide, where kids came to our after school programs who identified as queer young people. Or who had questions about their identity in the world and as they were coming of age in that. So we have a wonderful artist who works with us who created a book club for queer kids. And it has just sparked everything within our own conversation. We now have that same artist who's going to be directing and is writing a new piece called The Deepest Breath, Cheyenne Masura. She's just absolutely wonderful. And they also are premiering that piece. It's about a young child who is grappling with their own identity and does finally come out towards the end. So it will be one of the first TYA pieces that is not animals, right, Khalia? That is on stage where young people can see a young person coming of age who is grappling with anxiety, who is also grappling with their own identity. This story has not been told on a touring stage in the US, and so we felt like it was absolutely time. We've also just continued an LGBTQIA programming and just continue to bolster that programming. We have after school programming. We have a new documentary series that's going to be coming out that features a lot of people within the queer community and their experiences as a queer person in America from many different lenses, and what had there been some sort of arts programming and a community for them, what would that have looked like? So we are really excited about all that programming. I've kind of lost the question, but that's some of the work that we've been doing
You did just fine. So now that I jumped into the tough stuff, I want to go to some of the more basic things that I was curious about. I wanted to find out what happened to your company when we went into shutdown, how it affected your company, and how you maintained your audience, or how you kept your kids engaged, or did you? I mean, what was it like? Khalia, do you want to talk about the San Francisco area?
Sure. Much like New York, California became really strict in how they were handling COVID in 2020. So everything shut down, including theaters, gathering spaces. So the entire Theater Bay area completely shut down. And I joined as the artistic director in the middle of all of that. So I have only known crisis. Interesting. So but I was really proud of our team. We were a tiny but mighty team. So we have since been able to grow a little bit, but we were a small team of about 8 or 9 of us, and that was a really hard decision that our CEO Nina had to make to save the organization. And what we did with our creativity amongst all of us is we got really innovative, and we literally started thinking outside of the box, and we recognized that the mission was still true. How are we going to bring the arts to kids? And some of the first ways that we thought to get innovative, we created a show called A Kid's Play About Racism that incorporated mixed media as well as live theatrical storytelling. So we were one of the first ever in the heart in the beginning of 2020, the summer of 2020, to actually utilize that medium. And I think I feel confident in saying we were one of the instigators, I think, for then the continuation. Bob, I think you mentioned like Zoom performances and virtual work and things like that. So we were one of the first that did it, and it was featured on Broadway On Demand when Broadway On Demand was becoming a bigger hub for maintaining a lot of that virtual content. And then the other thing that was super cool is that we were like, you know what, how can we use all of our skills and talents in a way where we don't have to create something that is on the screen? Because a lot of the things we were hearing from parents and caregivers and teachers is that there was so much screen time. Our children were being so it was so funny because there was a time in which we were like, oh, they're watching too much TV. But then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, they are literally on the screen all the time. So we created a series called Play On, which is a screen-free storytelling series where you get a box that has a bunch of really cool props and other things that can help enhance the theatrical experience. You get access to the download of the show itself, and there's a series that you're listening to, and we separated it by age. So there was the Discovery series for the littles that took very common nursery rhymes, but we created our own versions of them. And then we had the Play On Adventure series for our older kids. And so it was really a cool way, I think, for us to show that it doesn't have to just live on the stage in order for it to be considered art, in order for it to be a theatrical experience for kids. And in fact, what it did do is it allowed the kids to really take ownership and agency over how they wanted to participate during that time, because they could pause it, stop it. They were activated even more so, which then has led to us really trying to figure out how do we take that exciting thing of like immersive interactive and bring it into now being able to do and produce work in person, bring them back into our theater. So I'm loving seeing the fact that, yes, it was really difficult for us. We will always say thank you to the government because we were beneficiaries of a lot of those opportunities financially through the government that I do believe kept us going and being able to do this particular type of project. And it is now influenced how creative we can get. Like, we don't have to do it the way we've always done it. We actually can change and shift it up. So I'm really grateful that I work with a bunch of individuals who kept saying yes. It was really, really great for me as someone stepping into leadership for the very first time, wary of who I'm working with and where I'm working. We really came together and we were like, how are we going to keep these kids enjoying the magic of theater, even if they can't come physically to our space?
I'm going to give the same question to Mara, but first, it occurs to me that you might want to fill in a little bit about what you were doing before you started at Bay Area. And I think
Sure.
you had a life before that.
Yeah, nope, I just popped into existence in 2020. Who am I? Hey y'all, I like to identify as a multidisciplinary artist. I mean, don't we all? Like we're multi-hyphenate. So I started out as an actor and a teaching artist, and through mentors who saw something special in me that I didn't see in myself at the time, was given opportunity to direct and choreograph. And at first it was with young people, so I was very comfortable working with kids in that way. And then through, again, mentors being like, you can do this with adults, right? And I was like, no, I can't. I look like I'm 12. They won't listen to me. They did. And we had a great time. And now I've really enjoyed actually working with adults, doing work that is going to be for kids, because it's a very special way of directing and doing choreography. And most recently, I directed and choreographed at First Stage, which is in Milwaukee, for those of you who are in the Midwest. And I've never been to Milwaukee. I was like, oh, this was never a city that I ever thought I'd go to. But they got the rights to produce a new show based on Arthur, the famous television program and book series by Mark Brown, through PBS. And so I got to bring to life a new musical based on Arthur and all of those characters. And that was the first time that I got to combine adults and young people, because First Stage does age appropriate casting, which means that they will choose a show, and if the characters in the show are kids, they will actually hire kids. Some theaters, like Bay Area Children's Theater, we will hire adults to play those children's parts. So it was really cool that I was able to take both things that I enjoyed doing and mash it together into one show all together. But yeah, that's what, I'm out here, I'm directed, I'm acting, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm doing it all. It's what we do. We're artists.
And you're practicing eloquence as well. The eloquent Khalia Davis. Great guest. Thank you. Mara, COVID and Treehouse Shakers. Actually, you know what? Explain why you chose Treehouse Shakers as the name of your company.
Again, I was a small young child. So we, the treehouse is a place of imagination where you go and you play. And when you think of that, you think of that's where you play as a child. So that was why that name came to us. And Shakers, we really just felt that kind of expressed the movement aspect to the company and the dance, because dance is so important. So that's why.
So now let's talk about your COVID response and how your company lived through the shutdown.
Well, I think, I loved what Bay Area Children's Theater did with the boxes. It really was so impressive and inspiring to watch all of our colleagues kind of grapple with what to do. I felt like we kind of got our collective hive brain on, and we just started saying, like, how do we help each other? How do we support each other too? That it felt really good to feel like a full community. So I have to give a shout out to our colleagues that kind of really came together. For us, we were on tour, of course, with The Boy Grew Flowers, and we actually have a copy of the video. The entire audience is coughing, like insanely coughing, and we were terrified, of course. We came back to the city to do a few more shows of Hatched, and then the shutdown happened. And my first thought was, what are my performers going to do? What is this company going to do? I was more concerned about the people I employ than myself or my family, which I love my family and I was concerned about them, but I knew I could lock them up and we could have a safe quarantine. I was more concerned about the young artists that I employ, how are they going to pay their bills? So that became the first thing of how do we get back, how do we make sure that everyone is supported? We immediately we did the Broadway on Demand. We started selling our videos, showcasing on Saturday mornings with Broadway on Demand, presenting at art centers around the country, started buying our videos and presenting them in their seasons. So now they had virtual seasons in which they were presenting our work. We immediately created after school programs. I was very concerned about low income children that we work with, our children that we work with in the projects. I couldn't go to sleep at night. I was so worried about the kids. We created that still like comes back to me, sorry. We created a 9-part television series called Pillow Fort for young people to bring a dance experience into their homes. It was the host goes into a pillow fort that he's created and invites young people in, and they go on a different journey in each episode. So once we felt kind of safe enough to do one camera shoots, we started doing that with the company to help pay for things and then help to pay them for their creative time. And that idea came out of our company members. I really felt like my role as the artistic director and the person who had co-founded the company was to step back and allow the company to say what they needed during that time. So Pillow Fort came out of that. We also created Dance Break, which was a series of dances, all different styles of dance that either went with our performances or were just, hip hop for young people or ballet for different ages that could be streamed into the classroom. So once children were allowed to go back into the school system, schools across the country started using our Dance Break series for their classrooms to have kids get up and move, which is so important for learning. Your brain needs the movement in order for the synapses to actually work. So that to us was really important. And we created after school programs and in-school programs. And then we also did summer camps. So that's basically how we got through the majority of it. Once schools allowed us to come back in, we started slowly coming back into schools. And we had been creating a show for babies for 6 to 18 months that I wrote and directed called Flutter. And that had been on hold. So once the entire company was vaccinated, we're performers who also move. So we're extremely on top of each other, rolling on the floor. Once we were vaccinated, because you absolutely cannot rehearse on Zoom a dance piece, we all started making that show last summer. And for our process, we always make a show 2 years about. It takes us a while. And so that was a very fast process. And again, like Khalia said, thank you to the government, to the city of New York City, to the state of New York. Treehouse Shakers was really used those resources so that we could keep the company afloat. And we're very grateful that the government was there for arts funding.
The government got us through too. Yay, the government. There were a couple of questions in here, but I wanted to do a follow-up on this, but let me just go to Randall. He says, a couple of times in the conversation, it has felt like there is an eye roll about using animals to tell the story. Is this true? I guess the other way of saying this is, although you obviously feel that the animal storytelling has been done and done and done, are you still open to using animals as part of your toolkit for telling stories?
Yes. Oh, we love animals. Let me tell you what our season is. It's literally where our theme is a season of friendship and fun. So most of the shows that we have in our season feature animals. We're about to go into the holidays and we are doing A Year with Frog and Toad, TYA. And it's one of
you're doing the version that was done on Broadway, done in New York. Oh yeah, okay. The Reali brothers.
Yes, and truly like such a great model for, again, if you're more interested in that traditional, like we're adapting the stories and we're adding music and plot and a through line, as opposed to maybe something more abstract or devised like Treehouse Shakers does. But the thing that I love about the show is that they really, I just think that they did such a beautiful job. The thing that I think what we're trying to point out, and I'm glad you said that, Bob, it's just that animals have been used a lot. It is that they have also been the excuse for Oh, but our messaging is super universal and we're super inclusive. I mean, it's an animal. Like any kid can see themselves as an animal. And that is the thing that I'm trying, hopefully, to change that mindset, that we should not just assume that because you see baby Simba, that a black boy is like, oh, I'm Simba. No, he's seeing a lion, and that's great. But then when you go to see the Lion King on Broadway and you see a black boy up there jumping and dancing and having feelings and emotions and is failing and trying again and growing, and you're like, oh, I see myself in that. That's the difference that we're talking about. So please, if you're out there and you've written a story which has animals as best friends doing adventures, we love it. We absolutely love it. We're also just hoping that there's going to be room for even more story that will speak directly to the human experience as well.
Mara, you want to say a word in favor of animals?
I mean, I love animals as well. Like I'm an avid animal lover. But I also, you know, and we have also used animals at times, but it has been, you know, when I was talking about the deepest breath, the reason that we've seen some queer theater on tour for young people from other parts of the world, and it has also been animals, like 2 gay penguins, you know, hatching their egg. That's great, but like Khalia is saying, we want kids to recognize themselves on stage. We want them to be empowered by the work that they're seeing. We want to, I don't want to say change society, but we definitely want to advocate for the way the world should be. And the world should be just. And so that means seeing yourself as a young person, recognizing yourself on stage. You know, for many years, I'll just say it as a white woman, I only saw men on stage getting these leading roles, or I saw white men becoming directors and white men were getting recognized. So I completely think that the world has room for all of us, and it has room for everyone's voice. And if we're going to change, we have to make that change.
Thank you both for all of that. I appreciate it. I'm going to come back to another Randall question, but let's jump to Leslie. She wants to know, is kissing okay in TYA?
It depends what the age is, I guess, or what kind of kissing. I mean, you know, I think the deepest breath, I think there's some like talk of kissing. I know for our show Under the Tangle, the 2 characters, the lead characters, and that's for 9 to 13, they kiss. There's a moment of kissing.
Okay. Oh, and why don't you bring in the questions into the room so that we have another voice, the playwright at work here. We'll bring another voice into the room.
We have another question from Randall. Yes. And his question is, I'm new to TYA, but have a completed piece that I would like to at least get read. I've run into a couple of theaters that say we write all our own content. It can feel like the door is shut to outside material. Can our guests touch on this? And then as a follow-up, is there any sort of resource similar to Play Submissions Helper that focuses on the TYA world?
We'll deal with the first part because I'm not sure you would necessarily know about the second. I guess he wants to know, what are the opportunities for people that aren't part of your company to get their work done? Not necessarily by you. I mean, if you are a company-driven theater company, then he might be considered an outsider. I think that the answer to this question is the answer to everything in theater. Basically, hang out with the people you want to work with and become part of who they are, and they know you, and then they'd be more open to your work. They might ask you to write something. Do you want to add anything to that? Okay, I guess, Randall, do you want to ask it in a different way, or does that answer it for you?
Yeah, actually, I will chime in. That sounds like a bit of a shut door. That's sort of like saying if you want your show to have a chance at a theater across the country, you need to move across the country and get involved with that theater. And for those of us who don't live in a place with a big children's theater, or necessarily where it's a big part of, or any type of theater, you know, we're stuck sending our submissions out and hoping that somewhere out there someone's wanting to read them.
Well, let's ask it in a
yeah.
different way. Do you ever accept submissions from?
Yeah, I
from
guess
outside?
that's the question.
Khalia seems to say yeah.
Yeah, we don't necessarily we are a company making and devising work. We did have an artist come to us and say, I have an idea for a play. And so this is actually how The Deepest Breath came about. But there is, Khalia, doesn't TYA have like a TYA Osage has a place that playwrights can connect, and they have a playwrights affinity group, I think.
Yeah, so if you go to tyausa.org, there are some resources there that can lead you to, I think, what you're looking for, which is specifically like what are those sites where you can upload scripts or submit them for potentially being utilized in play readings and things of that nature, workshops. But yeah, because they do exist and they are out there. And I hear exactly what you're saying, Randall. It is hard. And I think you're echoing probably what a lot of playwrights are feeling and thinking, is that you put a lot of work into something and you want to get it out there and you want to hear it. But I do want to echo and lift up what Bob was implying around community. And maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be across the country community, but I do love the idea of, especially because you just said there isn't a huge like theater for young audience presence. There's not a lot in where you are, and that's exciting to me. Actually, it feels like you might be able to unlock something if you were able to bring some folks together and put it on yourself, or just have an informal backyard gathering of some kind and invite some of the theater institution, like the people that are running some stuff in your neighborhood, to come by. There's something really exciting about the potential of what you can offer if you reach out. Yeah. Well,
the other thing I just want to say is it's similar to the plight of the playwright in general, which is that people tend to produce people they know. So even if we're not dealing with theater for young audience, when we're sending out plays, we're sending them out cold, and these people don't know us. If they do know us, then they're more likely to pay more attention. There are theater companies, TYA companies, TheaterWorks USA. They produce stuff that's written by people that aren't part of their company at all. And TYA does the same thing. TYA is always looking for material. You just have to find the places that don't really rely on internally devised work, which is what Mara is indicating her company mostly does. So and that's also the same thing with all of these theater companies, whatever you're writing. If you like the company and you want to be part of the company, hang out with the company. It is transactional. I mean, basically, you want them to produce your play, so by implication, they would want you to help them or be part of their community. So sure, I mean, it could be considered a little bit transactional, but it also makes sense to me. The other thing is that people want to produce people that they know that they're going to want to spend time with, so that, again, they don't know you. But if they know you personally, then it's another way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at you and your work. It's like, I like Randall. I want to have him hanging around. Let's think about this. And yes, there are people out there, Randall, who say, I like Randall. I like to have him hanging around. I'm one of them. Okay. Leslie, Owen, you have I missed anything else? I mean, there's others.
Yeah, we have a question from Leslie. Do you have a preferred length for your plays? Should they be bell to bell, or are 10-minute plays okay? Which do you prefer?
And again, this is a broader question for TYA in general. It depends on the company. But what are the lengths of your pieces? How long do yours usually run? As a rule of thumb, I've always heard that the TYA needs to come in under an hour, preferably 45 minutes. I hear that a lot. I don't know if it's true.
We do 45 minutes. We have one show that runs 50 minutes.
That's it, under an hour.
Under an hour, but 10-minute plays, there are a lot of companies that are producing 10-minute plays, and there's plays also. I wanted to go back to Randall because I didn't want him to feel this way, but I know other playwrights who write for TYA, and they get them produced by having them published, and then other people find the published play. So I don't know all the ins and outs because that isn't the way I work necessarily. And I do think 10-minute plays are okay because there's 10-minute play festivals and there's 10-minute plays that young people want to do. So if your play is geared towards young people and they can present it, if you can get your play into a book, and I'm pretty sure there's one specifically for, middle school and elementary school, then teachers can find that play and they can also produce it, which schools are always looking for plays as well.
Well, okay, let's take Richard's question. Do you look for a specific cast size? What is ideal for your community and for the TYA community in large? What would be useful for him to know is how big are the pieces that you produce? I get, whether he's going to submit to you or not.
I think it's a great question, and it's going to be an annoying answer. It depends on the theater, because our theater has a certain ability, like certain resources and certain budget size and certain theater physical space size. So we tend to do shows that are under 9. So our sweet spot is 5, maybe 6 actors, and then you can have multiple characters within the show. But we have never produced anything that was more than 9 actors, like physical bodies on stage in our space. And but then you can go to the Children's Theater of Cincinnati, and they can have a whole show of like 21 people. So like it really does depend on the theater.
How about the size of the pieces that you produce, Mara?
Yeah, so we've always had 6, and then we had 5, and then I was like, this isn't like financially, it just doesn't make sense when we're on tour. So we tried to cut it down to 3, which then turned into 4 again because Mara. And then now I'm trying to do 3 people for our baby shows and between 5 and 6 for our other shows, just for tour life. It just, once it leaves New York, it has to be able to be produced on other people's staged, and they have to have the funding to be able to bring us in. So I do think that 5 is a sweet spot. I really do think that's a good amount of characters, and you can always have that, them playing multiple characters.
There's I guess there's a question from Carol Weiss. Is there room for music? I think it's a rhetorical question. Is there room for musical fairy tales in our modern world? There's not just room, there's a need for them. There's a need for us to look at the world through different perspectives. Right now we've got the country divided and yelling at each other. If a fairy tale can help somebody who disagrees with us see things in a different way, sure, let's go for a fairy tale. I mean, fairy tales, I love fairy tales. Jesus, of course I do. Carol, what is it you want to know from the question?
All right. It's very about myself. I have written 14 plays. 12 of them are musical fairy tales with modernized themes. But for instance, my Snow White is a feminist. But when I tell people it's a fairy tale, the first reaction is, "Oh, that's old-fashioned. We won't do that anymore."
Are you talking to theater for young audience companies, or are you just talking to producers and theater companies in general?
Just in general, TYA companies, children's theaters. I've just noticed recently the demand for things like the fairy tales has just gone down, and they'd rather have something that's just a contemporary story, even though the moral of the fairy tale can be totally applied to the modern world. So shall I put them away?
You know what, Carol? Is June Osper, are you still here? I can't scroll because my mouse isn't working.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can Carol contact you and talk about this with you? Because you're somebody who's written successful fairy tale musicals for young audiences.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
great.
So Carol, you should connect with June Ospa.
Thank you. I would love to. I appreciate it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
See, there's another message.
And
that's-
I just want to say, Into the Woods, like it's still, it's all it's fairy tales will never go away. I think that maybe some of the pushback from TYA is probably they want to see modern fairy tales. They want to see it in a different light. You know, Cinderella, they want to see the Chinese version. They want to see where the fairy tale came from, not the continual lens of the European, you know, German or the English fairy tale. They want to see the different aspects to it broken up. So I don't think fairy tales can ever be dead. I'm Irish. And I think that for good reason we have those stories. There's dark sides and there's things that young people can see and they can explore that dark side within a fairy tale that takes them to the new place. But I think for TYA, if you are having pushback, it's because our field really feels they want to break it apart and bring it new and fresh again. It is my feeling.
You know what we never addressed? We never addressed the difference between TYA and family shows. So can you want to talk a little bit about that, just as a little
Sure,
add-on?
I'll do a little quick. So you could have a company do a show and label it for the family. And those would be shows that aren't necessarily written for the lens of a young person's journey, like to explore, but more so like it's for everybody to enjoy, which is the ultimate goal of a lot of TYA work. We want everybody to enjoy it. But if you go and see shows like Mary Poppins or The Music Man or Alice in Wonderland, or like these are or Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast. These are shows that may go under or fall under family because it is anybody from any generation will be able to really appreciate what's happening on the stage. TYA tends to sometimes really dive into what are children, what are they going through development wise. We're really looking at development. I mean, Treehouse Shakers, Spellbound Theater Company, there's a few other organizations that Hugando and Play, like they're really focusing on littles, the babies, and their development. So they're going to create work that is specific for them, that it's more targeted or intentional.
Owen, I think the implication of his question is would you say that there's a difference in the creating of and the content of a show that is for children as an audience versus children as actors? And I think Owen, I think there definitely are distinctions between the two. Can you address them, Mara? Do you want to?
Well, Khalia referenced it a little bit earlier that a lot of us use professional performers within our company, but she was specifically talking about the company she just worked with Arthur, and they use children as actors. I don't know, Tada also uses children as actors within their piece. A lot of people may use children as actors when they're working in the in-school programming, but I don't know as many companies that are touring professionally with children. That's more for stationary theaters.
It's expensive to tour a show with kids because you have to bring their family, you have to bring a studio teacher. There's legal ramifications, there's legal stuff around kids on tour. Even when you do a sit down and you have kids in a cast, if you notice when you go see a Broadway show where they're kids, they're double cast because they can't miss a certain amount of school. So that is another reason why you may not see shows that have a lot of kids in them tour. They don't really tour that much unless it's a big name, for the most part. It's also why Neil Patrick Harris made that one joke that one year that he was hosting the Tony Awards, because it happened to be the year that on Broadway, like every show had a bunch of kids in it. I think it was like A Christmas Story, Andy, Matilda, School of Rock, like there was just a ton, because that never happens. So
And June, you feel free to ask to make your comment or ask your question. I'm not sure. I think it's a comment.
I just wanted to mention something because I've been doing this for a really long time. and I've worked with kids, I've worked with the Y, I worked with the MOS. I think when you're a writer and you write things like this for kids, what I did is I found the Children's Theater here in Maryland and went there and sent him stuff. And I also feel it's like if you make yourself available to getting to know the people, it's a good thing. You know, I found I was able to do this because I made myself available, because I got to know the theater people in my neighborhood. And I think it's a really good thing to do, you know. And I have a children's book that's also based on a musical that I got amazing reviews from Peter Felicia, shown to kids with autism and things like that. It's just, I think a matter of really showing up and getting to know everybody. I think that's really important.
To go back to something I said earlier, there are many aspects of TYA, and some of them are on the fringe, and some of them are in the center of it. And there are companies like Amos, that you work with, June, that actually train actors. Also, Open Hydrant Theater, Luis Reyes Cardenas. He's got a whole program that trains young people to be actors, and he actually puts them together with professional actors. There were so many different versions of theater that involves young people. Let's not call it TYA in this case. We're just saying theater that involves or engages young people. Find your niche. I mean, if it's something that you're passionate about, if you love writing for young people, write for young people. If you writing characters that you think would be engaging and moving, played by children, write that. You know, write whatever your vision sees for this. And there's a place for it. There's many companies. It's a big industry. TYA is bigger than I think some of us realize. And that's one of the reasons why Khalia has sent you all to TYA USA, and to read up on it and get the scope of it. I don't know whether you are able to stay a little bit longer, but I'm going to thank you both for being with us today. And I'm going to invite everybody to be with us next week. We have two true members, or true community members, Emelina Pedigo and Michael Roderick, are going to come and talk about the different coaching methods that they've developed to try to help theater people with their careers. Theater people and everybody. Michael's a little bit into branding. Emelina is into really thinking through things, and her thing is called Another Way, #Another Way. You'll learn more about what their beliefs are and how they can help you next week. So thank you. And I'm going to also thank my YouTube viewers, if you're out there, and my podcast listeners, if you're out there. Thank you for being with us. I hope you'll keep coming back. We do this, here comes the pitch. We do this as a public service, and we do willingly and lovingly offer this as a pay what you can, which can always be free if you need it to be free. But we occasionally will need it to be something. So if you can donate to us at all, that would be great. We're heading back into live performance. We're going to start having to book venues. Oh my God. It's going to cost money. So go to TrueDonate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com. It's also in the chat in case you missed it. And I hope you'll join us week after week and be part of the community. Those of you out there who haven't been part of the community yet, please join us. Thank you for being with us. Mara and Khalia, you guys were great. I loved it. Loved every minute of it.